I've personally had met a lot of people in the crew and people that we hire and work with through Instagram.
Czap, take 2.
Hey, cool.
Hey, it's Walter here. Hey, it's Walter with the Social Academy, where we're interviewing industry professionals, content creators, and influencers in the industry. Here in the studio today, we have Andrew, one part of Prelude Films, director of photography. I'm sure a master of all other trades. Thanks for coming in, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks for having me here.
Let's just go ahead and jump right into your origin story.
Okay.
How'd you get into film? Was it something you always had an interest in, or was it something that kind of you naturally found your way on accident? How did that go about?
Yeah, I always kind of say I got into film unintentionally. And so my background in high school was in photography. I took a photo class with a really great teacher who we kind of learned the process of making an image and seeing it from beginning to end through the actual medium of film. So shooting it, developing it, and printing it.
The whole red room.
Yeah. So that was cool because it was like magic, and you get to every part of the process you have hands on. And so he encouraged me to pursue a career in the creative industry. Sure. And so I liked Photoshop at the time. So I was like, I'll do graphic design. So I went to school for graphic design and did that for 2 years after college. Yeah. And during that time, one of my good friends and now one of my business partners, Josh, he went back to graduate school for film, and he needed somebody to shoot his projects that he was writing and directing. And so he asked me to do it just because of the past kind of experience, but also knowing that it was going to be, I was new to the side of cinematography. So it was a little bit of baptism by fire, getting acquainted with the terminology, the technicality of it.
Sure.
But it was cool because it just was able to work with a lot of good crew members who we still work with today, and it was a really good learning experience. But the background in design really helped me bridge the gap just as far as talking about the sensibilities of a project or how to approach something or how something should feel.
Colors.
So it was I feel like the design background influences it all too, and so that was.
I also feel like you knowing also the craft of the old school film craft of developing film. I'm sure that gives you a whole nother appreciation for, I don't know, because like you said, there is some magic there.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that plays into some of your work as well.
Yeah, well, I still shoot a lot of film and develop black and white at home. But what I like about it is it teaches you to see. You're not just looking off a monitor, you're seeing with your eyes. And the whole, when shooting film, it's like you're figuring out where's your exposure, where's your gray point, and how's everything sitting within that. So you can approach a scene and light it, hopefully more so with your eyes than with the monitor, which saves time, and you can move more efficiently. And we still shoot things on film too, on motion film.
Right. No, and talking about seeing things with your eye, I'm sure that's another skill and practice that you're also still continuing to practice. Because that is a very unique skill set to just from the eye, without any help.
There was one time on set we were shooting a project on film on 16 millimeter, and there was a crew member that was new to shooting on film, and so you have reference monitors, but it's not like you're looking at a digital monitor that's colorful, clear, and all this. It was a old school director's monitor that's black and white, really grainy, and he was just like, wow, this looks really, he was telling us afterwards, he's like, I thought you guys didn't know what you were doing. Yeah. It looked awful. And then he was like, then I realized you're using this light meter and doing these different things, and then I realized you guys are magicians.
Yeah.
You're a wizard. And it's but I like the idea. It gives you a little bit of creative control because you're kind of, you and the gaffer are really the only ones that know.
So, you gone from graphic design, not listening to your teacher, and then finally into, going to photography and kind of realizing this is your fit. How did the birth of Prelude Films come about?
Yeah, so at the time, I was planning on actually moving to New York to pursue just creative direction and the design side of things, and was kind of trying to make the plans to do that, but then kind of just had a gut feeling and just an instinct that I wasn't supposed to do it, and decided not to. And then we were at the old shipping and receiving here in Fort Worth listening to an artist play, and me and Josh were there and was kind of talking, and leaned over and was like, hey, do you want to start a production company? So it was kind of just birthed like that. And then we have one of our other business partners, Jim, who's a good friend of ours Josh was going to him, like, seeking some advice of, like, how to do this. He has an entrepreneurial background.
Right.
And was like, well, how would you like having a third partner? So it's, which is really helpful because neither me and Josh, like, want to
deal with finances and
like
the logistics of it.
Of running a business. And so, that's kind of the inception of it. And we just started,
to start going with the equipment. It's a perfect trifecta. Like I said, you kind of built there. You got it sounds like you're two, you and your partner with a collaborative vision, and then someone who can kind of run to actually make this work.
Yeah.
Because I know as artists, we don't, sometimes don't even like to read emails, know? So someone to help you with that.
Yeah.
No, it's fascinating. So what about, what was the first kind of project that might have like really took you off, like going like, okay, we got something here. This is the thing.
What's funny, the first project we ever did was for Sundance Square,
Yeah.
which the person that hired us for that, we ended up hiring this last year. And so that's kind of funny. But yeah, that was the first project, just like, kind of highlighting.
Well, that's a good insight.
properties
Yeah. Like, so would you almost recommend, like, maybe for any kind of beginner filmmakers, whether look around locally, who needs help and who can use your talents? Is that something you would advise?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, like, one of the things that, like, we've found some success in, I know a lot of other people have as well, is just spec work. So it's the idea of, like, oftentimes it's like you can't win work if you don't have the work. So, like, or if, like, like, hey, we want to shoot a car commercial, but you have, like, no car work, like, you're not going to get hired to do that. So you can go and use the resource that you have to shoot something that can convey a creative concept or story that then you can pitch to them, or you can just put on your website and reel as like, this is spec work. And so, like, we did that last year, and it's led into a client that will be for this year. And
oh wow, fascinating.
And so it's a good way to do that, and it could be a local business.
Sure.
But I think it's just finding people who have a need for it.
Kind of touching on that, I'm kind of going a little bit down a rabbit hole, but like when it comes to kind of doing spec work and collaborating, and really it seems like you're honing your niche, what kind of what was some of the mindset there? Did y'all have kind of more of a specific type of work you want to do? Because obviously what you put out there is what you kind of get.
So in this specific case, it's an outdoor brand, and so, like, me and Josh, we enjoy mountain biking, skiing, hiking, a lot of those things. And so, and a lot of the work that we had done previously, kind of earlier on in Prelude, was a lot of branded documentary work for, like, going on, like, 6-day elk hunts and, like, shooting content that was kind of geared in that outdoor side of things. So we wanted to do that, but do it on a higher level, with a little bit more intentionality than just, like, going out and shooting stuff and figuring out how to edit it. And so I think that was the main. Oh, and then we also had a photographer friend of ours knew the creative director and had done some work, so it was like he was able to connect us to the brand. We got free product for it, so it was like there was already like an in kind of established,
right,
which was helpful.
Having that, I think it seems like the most important takeaway from a lot of is like kind of being involved in the industry and networking, because as much as that's online, the people in person kind of have probably much easier to connect with and establish those kind of opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what has been one of your favorite projects you've been a part of? It could be on social media, outside of social media. Kind of maybe what stemmed from that. Like, has there been something where it's like, wow, I can't believe we're actually now doing a shoot for this?
There's been a couple of them. I mean, we kind of do, a lot of stuff we do is commercial work. It's how we pay the bills, and Dallas-Fort Worth has a lot of that. And so I think one of the favorite commercials that we've done, I'm trying to think. I mean, we did one that we actually shot it in the studio, but we had to illustrate, like, the passing of a day. And so we did it with, like, gradients changing and had some different lighting effects moving the background to resemble the sun and the moon. That was just a fun, like, lighting creative challenge, and ended up being, like, their best performing ad that they've ever had as a company. So, like, that was also kind of like a little bit of a win. It was like a fun project and it did well. So like that's
that's the best. I think that right in between there. Yeah. No, it's like I'm sure it sounds like you got some really cool creative freedom there.
Yeah.
And then also like, oh, like this is doing well, and hopefully people trust us more with this kind of vision. Yeah. So, I know we're getting a little bit ahead of we'll talk about your film that y'all have been working on, but how did you get started on social media? Was it, whether it's promoting or, I don't know, sharing work? Like, what was kind of the origin story there?
Yeah. I mean,
Was it something you always been on, or was it something like maybe we need to get on here and start sharing stuff?
Yeah. I mean, kind of goes back to like whenever we started the company. I think we just made like the main one we use is Instagram, and I think just within our profession, like right now, that's the one that's it's a little bit of a portfolio in a sense. Right. And so like I used it in like 10th and 11th grade and was like sharing terrible pictures of my food and like then like as that went on to like share more photography and different stuff and so whenever we started the company we realized like we need to have some sort of presence, almost like I don't want to jump too far ahead in the questions, but it's almost be able to go through like it helps with like the vetting process in a sense of like, okay, like these people are real, like they do real work,
right? I'm sure with like behind the scenes and stuff like that, really kind of showing, it's not just like here's the work, and you don't see like there's also
how it's actually done.
Yeah.
So we kind of view it as we share a lot of behind the scenes, final stills, just like tone things that kind of like relate to like the Prelude brand, and so it's just we kind of just see it as like it's a form of like vetting. So it's like we don't post a ton on it, but we try and post enough on it that's like we're working, we're doing stuff, right. We're being creative, those kinds of things. And
so going back, you said Instagram is your primary platform y'all use for that, and how has it become a pretty integral part to your business?
I don't know if we also do stuff on LinkedIn as well, but I think with Instagram, it's like oftentimes it's like we're not finding like a brand to work with off of Instagram, but it's like you're able to, they reach out through a different means, whether that's a referral or that's through some other piece of marketing that you might have out there, or they just see your work. Like they check out your Instagram. It's like, they can see the people kind of behind the company too. And so it's, even with a lot of the people that we work with, it's like the creative directors and producers at the companies or agencies. It's like we become genuine friends with them, and it's like so you follow each other on social media, and it's like what I like to think of it is like you stay at the forefront of people's minds.
Yes.
So whenever somebody's like, hey, I got a project coming up, like, oh yeah, like Prelude, they were just doing this shoot that like, oh, that would be really cool to bring them out on this. So it's just trying to stay at the front of people's minds. But I don't know if we're getting, I don't think it's like brands coming and looking at our Instagram and hiring us directly off of it.
Sure.
It's just like one of the pieces of like, there's, a series of like 4, 5, 6 steps for somebody like signing a contract. Like it's just one of those things in the wheel that also just, because ultimately if a company's going to come and spend a lot of money on producing something, it's like, it's the same methodology with like a website, the branding, your treatments, everything. It's like you want it to look the quality of like what they're paying you for, if that makes sense. So that's
no, totally. I think that's a really good point. It's portfolio, it's you, it's your work, and also I think it's good, like you say, keep it on top of people's minds and conversations as fast as social media is moving. Yeah. It's like you kind of have to not stay relevant, but just stay around. Yeah. So now I'm curious on, you have. It seems like every creative profession has a different preferred platform. Is the film? I would say film Instagram is film mainly that seen on Instagram, or is it? Do you see you also mentioned LinkedIn? Where do you see a lot of that kind of conversation happening?
Yeah, I would say like Instagram's a decent platform because it's like it's good to like, you can share images on it, stills from the projects behind the scenes. Ultimately like you're constricted and like you're viewing it in a 9:16 platform, which like, so many times you're shooting 16:9, so you're not like you're looking at something in its very unintended format.
Yes.
When you think a narrative project, like ultimately like you're hoping it's being seen on a theater at a festival or a TV at home.
Very much like Christopher Nolan, how
Yeah.
he's like, you need to see this on the biggest screen, IMAX.
But seeing it like, because you can't turn your phone horizontal
Sure.
and Instagram go horizontal, it's like you're kind of, it feels sometimes like a little bit of a disservice to it. But it's been a great, I've connected with a lot of people and I've worked with a lot of people because of Instagram.
Wow.
Just
Yeah.
within local DFW. And then it's the way to you're able to keep up kind of like a friendship in a sense, to see like the things that are going on in their life, so you can talk about it. Or it's like I share a lot with other things that I find inspiration from.
Right.
So it's,
like flipping on stories, sharing stories. Hey, this is what I'm into. I think that's also part of building your brand to a certain extent,
Yeah. But yeah, so I think it's been really helpful in that way. But as far as like a platform for consuming the content, you're definitely limited, and it does a little bit of a disservice to it. But it is probably right now, I think it's the best way to do it. You have if you're at a networking event or you get off a job working with somebody, like, hey, like, what's your Instagram? And it's like you add them, and then you can stay at the front of their mind.
Tell us about your recent film Smoke, which I'm sure it's currently in post and probably wrapping up. But from what one, tell us a little, I guess, brief about it, and then also kind of go into what to our understanding it seemed like it was crowdfunded. Maybe touch on that, and curious to know about that whole process.
Yeah, so we recently wrapped production on a short film called Smoke in the end of October. It was co-written by Josh Gallus and Lizette Barrera, she's one of our producers, and had like some story consulting from the Allen Fire Department chief, and also Lizette's partner Austin, who's a firefighter in Dallas. And so the storyline is essentially it's a firefighter returning home from the worst shift of his career and having to go into he gets home and it's his daughter's birthday party, so like going into like getting ready, entertaining, these different things, yet he's at the same time kind of trying to deal with what had just happened in the shift prior. It's
intense. It's very intense.
Yeah. So it's trying to speak to first responders and people, trying to speak to first responders who go through just mental health issues and PTSD through the things that they witness. Yeah. And so as far as from the funding aspect of it, crowdfunding was a part of it. We partnered with BetterHelp, which is an online therapy platform.
Right.
So they funded a good portion of it. Well, it's funny, we made a budget and we're like, oh, we can make it for this, and BetterHelp agreed to pay for that, and we cut some commercial content out of the film for them. That they're using to be able to run as ads and different things. But then we revisited the budget a few months later and like, well, actually we need, we need like $15K more or something. Mm-hmm. I forget how much it was, but we need some more money. So then we turned to crowdfunding specifically through Seed and Spark to then help raise the additional funding that we needed.
Were you all reaching out to communities like the other firefighters or first responders? Was that a community you kind of tapped into for that kind of crowdfunding, or was it other like followers and friends within the film industry?
Yeah, I think it was a mixture of both. Yeah. There was definitely some other, we had connections to other like fire departments and stuff, and so they were able to share through their channels. But I think the majority of the funding came through just people that we were already connected with previously. Whether that's friends, family who believed in the project, and so it was kind of a two-headed attack of like one through email and just personal text of like, hey, like this is the project that I'm working on, this is what it's about, like we'd love any bit helps, even just sharing it, then also sharing on Instagram updates like, hey, here's the cast that here's the casting that's coming in, here's sharing like the pre-production updates, the countdowns to shooting, so trying to build some momentum around the film towards the funding of it. And so at the end we were able to, you have to hit 80% of your target goal to get the actual funds to be funded. And so we were able to do that and got the rest of the money that we needed for the film. And so
heck yeah, congratulations on that, because that is really cool. And I think that's what you're tackling on that subject matter is very important. I feel like those people are the the ones really doing the work. Sometimes you're like, wow, okay, what am I stressing about? That's intense.
Yeah.
I'm sure, especially what you're talking about, like the trauma they're going through in those scenes. That's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
So, well, going into you're getting that funding, but you kind of touched on that about sharing that progress behind the scenes. So, like, do you have a social strategy in regards to promoting your film? And, like, have you seen success from that, or is that something you are planning on?
I think we're planning on it. I mean, through leading up to it, yeah, we're sharing, like, kind of the pre-production updates. During production, a lot of us, like, we kind of had a close friends list on Instagram for everybody that donated to the film, and, like, people are close to the project, so we could share screen grabs, like things we couldn't quite share with just anybody yet. But then, yeah, we were also sharing just a lot of, like, behind the scenes content, like anything, like we were like, hey, cast and crew, like, please, take photos and share and do all these different things. So, like, we were trying to get some buzz and just some words around what's all happening.
So using that kind of outreach to also help that conversation, not just you solely doing all the work. It seems like you're tapping into other resources as well.
Yeah. And that's, like, and I think just the nature of the film and the topic that it's tackling, like, hits a wide audience that's, like, timely as well. And so it's a message that's easy to share.
Yeah, no, totally. Easy one to get behind for sure. It's like that and saving animals, I think. What about, like, how does it go about hosting these, you're working films, and you for this one, maybe particularly in Smoke, are you all having it on a one page, or does each project have its own social media account? How are you all kind of, like, deviating that kind of spread of awareness, really?
Yeah. So we did 2 short films this year. One was Smoke, the other one is Search and Destroy, which was written and directed by Alex Rosales. So both of those had 2 different approaches. Smoke was just done through Prelude's Instagram account. I think that was just it just seemed, like, daunting to create another one and keep that going, and to how to, like, shift your audience to now look at that. Like, I think it just made more sense to share to the audience that we already had. But Search and Destroy, Alex was the one actually, like, kind of spearheading the social on that end. So he created a separate Instagram page for Search, and so we would be like, you can be invited as a collaborator, so it'd show up on our page. But that was kind of his decision in doing that, and which that's how he's done it with his previous films too. I think both have their pluses and minuses, as with most things, and so. Yeah.
No, I feel like it's whatever feels natural, and I think if there's a time and place, like, this needs to be its own thing, or like, hey, this is really our project. It sounds like we are going for that. So, well, I think social media, we all know how much has changed the landscape of video. As someone myself who's, started from video, beta tapes, all that kind of stuff, and now it's all done on the phone. Has that affected y'all's production and how y'all go about filming content, even for clients? Or do you adapt more for that platform, or kind of still stick to maybe your roots to a certain extent?
I think both. So there's obviously a technical side that you have to adapt to, because it's oftentimes we're asked to shoot for 3 different aspect ratios: 16:9, a 1:1, and a 9:16. And so that can be kind of a challenge whenever you're already asked to, like, fit a lot into a little amount of time. So it's like you end up, in our experience, you end up kind of compromising in some of the wider shots, because you typically center frame more things. You have to, for the 9:16 cut, your art and set decoration has to work in that and in the 16:9.
Sure.
And then ultimately you're extracting from it. But yet there's figuring out creative ways to do it, like on shooting, instead of just a 16:9 and extracting a 9:16 out of that, you can shoot an open gate, so it's a more of like a kind of like a 4:3-esque. So you extract a 16:9, but then on the 9:16 you get some more vertical height out of it. So figuring those things out. I mean, I heard somebody say the other day, it's like we're all goldfish now too. Like, we all have a 7-second attention span, which is a little bit disheartening. I mean, just being honest. Like, we're Yeah.
But also it kind of gives a challenge too, where it's like, I'm sure what y'all are sharing with that in your mind, going
Yeah.
like, is this the clip that we need to be sharing?
Yeah, or for the work we do for clients, like how can you hook them in the first like 1 to 3 seconds with whether that's a story hook or a visual hook or something. And so, I mean, oftentimes we're tasked with like, hey, you have 30 seconds, 15 seconds to tell this like micro story that has to fit these key different metrics or whatever into it. And so it creates interesting new problems. But what I like about it is we try to, like, our background is from more the narrative side of things. So it's like, how can you still approach these projects with like, well, I need to have a story, have like, you know, like a meaning.
Yeah.
And so that's been interesting to kind of figure out. And
And I'm sure that also has kind of like affected like the ideation in terms of even pre-production or scripting. I'm sure, is that something you always take in consideration too? Like, well, we got this scene, and you know, do you, in the back of your head, you go, should we rework this, or like,
Yeah.
you know, does that all kind of play into the ideation of it all?
Yeah, because it's, you know, you can't, I mean, even just like how you approach shooting something, it's like, you know, you can't have, if one, you know, if you're filming somebody walking from A to B, it's like, you know, in a film or short film or whatever, it's like you can follow that whole process. You can allow 10 seconds to happen in one shot. Like now it's
Sure.
like you have to have something like really cool and visual or cool camera movement if you're going to have a shot that lasts 10 seconds. Or it's got to be like bang, 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 like real
Right.
quick. And which is, yeah, on one hand, it can sometimes feel limiting because it's like you don't, it's hard to stray away from like what is the quote unquote like best practices of that. So it can feel limiting because it's like, well, crap, like we have to come up with an idea that's visually cool in the first like 3 seconds.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good. I feel like it's always a good practice.
Yeah.
Where like, in ways of like you didn't necessarily think before how to shorten that narrative.
Yeah.
Or present it in a very condensed way.
Yeah.
Which can still work in its own
Yeah.
form.
But that's like why, I mean, you shot 2 short films, both will be like in that 12 to 15 minute range. Working on feature length stuff too. So it's like finding like what, you know, like kind of the roots that like in the areas that you want to live in, like still doing that work on the back burner that kind of like feeds the soul in a different way.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
No, totally
Finding
agree. That's some very
ways to
artist,
yeah.
you know.
slow down. And that's why I love reading so much, because it's like I can't digest this entire paragraph. in
Yes,
7
yeah,
seconds.
really sit down and absorb it. I
Yeah.
totally agree. I think that's something, you know, we're all kind of still trying to
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
to slow down. No. So have you, you know, looking at your website, a lot of cool body of work. I see some clients there. OnePlus have y'all gotten any partnerships or clients through social media? Has that some of the stuff bubbled up from there, or was that something more
Yeah.
through networking? You know, how's your experience been on that?
So I mean, social media plays into, you know, getting new clients because it's a form of that vetting process of being able to like see the work, see they have a presence, see the like, okay, like yeah, they're reputable, these kinds of things, but yeah, I mean, a lot of it is it's people coming to the website to see the work, to see. I mean, ultimately, it's just like the work to speak for itself. And
Yeah,
then,
kind of like an extension of your website.
Yeah.
It's more like you going back to your portfolio.
yeah,
And just
Yeah.
going like, hey, you can go to our website, explore that, or quick glance, check us out on Instagram.
yeah,
Kind of get the, you know, scroll through and
Yeah.
get the idea.
yeah. I mean, I was talking about it before. Just like you're able to build a different relationship with the people who actually make decisions too. And so it's like, you know, you can go follow the creative director for some brand you might want.
Right.
And you can, you know, slide into his DMs or whatever you want to
Exactly.
do.
Yeah. No, I always tell people like, hey, shoot that person, an
Yeah.
artist, or you like shoot them a DM. They might not
Yeah.
respond, but they might, and you realize that's, I think, at the core of what social media was supposed to be.
Yeah.
You know, most used for is establishing those. It's crazy how much we can reach out and connect to those people that we. You know,
Yeah.
you might have like maybe known a PO box number and write them a
Yeah.
letter back in the day. You
Yeah.
know? Now it's like you said, there's many directors that I never thought I would be able to see more of because of social media.
Yeah.
And it's very, especially DPs, and seeing their lens and like how they're
Yeah.
putting stuff on social media. I think that's
Yeah.
fascinating, especially some of the most award-winning cinematographers, you're like, okay, what are you going to post on Instagram? What kind of content are you going to show me?
What's funny is they all post like, because they're all, I mean, a lot of them are older, so it's just like interesting pictures.
Yeah,
it has nothing to do with film. You like go on like,
well, dang, I thought I was going to find some. I mean, I guess,
lighting setups or something.
Is this my dad? I don't know.
It's like, nope, that's their daughter in some cool lighting museum.
No, it's very fascinating. But also it's I don't know, it's kind of cool where you're like, okay, like, it kind of takes some of the pressure off of it.
Yeah.
Well, this might be a little more relevant to your past short films, Search and Destroy. How has social media played in the distribution of your films or work? I always kind of talk about how, you're working locally, but now with the internet, anything can be global, reaching out to in places that you never thought you'd be able to reach.
Yeah. Both of those films are kind of, one's in post-production still being edited. The other one is about it's basically done. I think there has to be like one more pass of color on it. But that one's like gearing up for the festival circuit. So it will be, once it's like started submitting and getting accepted into places, like it's a real good platform to kind of share like how the film is doing. And so being able to share, we had like behind the scenes photographer and videographers on all of it too. So being like having a pool of content that we can like kind of supplement, these festivals this is coming up here, like catch the screening here. So I think like that's kind of how I think we'll use it for the most part.
Sure. And what about like with streaming? Is that something that y'all have also been maybe exploring? Like, hey, can we get this on a streaming platform? Is that something you're interested in or have looked into?
We have. I think a lot of times it's like, having connections into that stuff previously is like usually the most helpful within that. But then a lot of that is just garnered, or like that attention for potentially get it on like, an HBO or something of the sort is, it's from film festivals, it's from those kinds of things. And so that's also like a newer area to us too that we're trying to grow into, and especially as we move to doing more long form work too, seeing like what those methods for distribution are besides just like it's on the website and on Instagram, or it's getting pushed out, or if it's an ad.
Going back to what you were talking about with networking outside of social media, is that it seems like it seems like you see more effectiveness outside of it, or is it kind of a blend of both? Like, how has that affected the way you build those kind of business or connections?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that still like human face to face is always the best.
Right.
So I think it's like oftentimes it's like, you might work with a crew member or somebody, for a few days, and then you won't see them again for another, a couple months or a couple weeks or what it might be. And so it's a way to kind of bridge the gap sometimes because you're both working on other things. You might be out of town, whatever. So it's like, it's a way to kind of help keep the relationship going. And it's interesting because it's like, I've personally had like met a lot of people in crew and people that we hire and work with through Instagram, or it's like you start following them, and then it's like you start you post something like, hey, is anybody available to first AC on these dates, and then they'll respond like, hey, I am at, cool, what's your rate or whatever. And and so it's also, we use it to like hire crew sometimes if we if our first recommendations are kind of our digital Rolodex is like all booked up. But then I think, and it's also just a way like you can kind of gauge people's sensibilities and like their aesthetic and things through through Instagram or social media, through the seeing the things that they're inspired by through the previous work that they've done.
So what would be the best advice you would give to someone to kind of start making those conversations happening? And it seems like you established some really good connections, and I'm just wondering how, some advice on that kind of communication. Where does someone, what do you recommend on that note?
Well, I think one of the unique things about being here in DFW is like there's an openness. I think especially within film, there's a lot of like gatekeeping that's done within it, and it's like, it's kind of like a shielding of like what's actually happening. And so I found like DFW to be really encouraging because there's an openness, and so it's like just like ask, people are willing to meet and to ask and to talk to, and so it's just like, I mean, it could be scary, but at the end of the day, like the worst somebody will say is like, sorry, I'm busy, or like, no,
Sure, yeah.
But I think that's I think one of the biggest things is just, and I think also like, we, as creatives, like you see where you want to go and you look up to the people that have like come before you and the work that they're making, and you're like, oh, I'll never make it to that level or whatever. You kind of play that game. But I think one of the best advice that I've heard was just like grow with the people that are around you. And it's like, find those people that you enjoy working with, that you enjoy being friends with, that you can like go through a day of hell with and come out on the other side and still like, we'll do it again.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, no, that's amazing advice. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah.
What about, and also like, it sounds like kind of like the follow-up email is very important, or just like, even it's like, hey, y'all might not have an opportunity now, but just a reminder, I'm here. Is that something you also recommend?
Yeah, I think, even if it's depending on like what you're trying to do, or like what field you're trying to get in, it's like if you're wanting to, to DP, it's like a really great way to do that. It's like, you go up through assisting. So you're already building the relationships with producers and with directors from being on set with other DPs. So it's like you're working your way up kind of through the ranks. You're learning the technical things. So that way it's like, I think one of the biggest things to know, especially as somebody that's in more of like on set, like a leadership or manager role, is like, what is your ask cost? So if you ask somebody to do something, like what does that cost them? Is it time, money, morale, whatever it might be? And so it's like you kind of can learn that as you like go up and see other people work. But yeah, I think, we follow up all the time with people, like even waiting to hear back on clients, like feedback on something, or we send off a proposal and they're taking the time. It's like, I don't think there's a bad thing to be like, hey, we're excited about your project. Do you have anything, any thoughts about this? Or, I think it's, if you're able to lead with like enthusiasm and excitement about it, then I think that can be contagious and a good thing.
No, it's just keeping the door open, be like, hey, I'm here whenever. Okay, I'm going to be busy working. No, I think it's a really good perspective and mindset to keep about it.
Yeah.
Well, Andrew, I appreciate you coming in. We're pretty much at the end here, but before we sign off, I just want to see if you have any last words or projects you want to plug in. I guess your social media handles. Go ahead and feel free to give a shout out to the audience of people watching. Whatever, what is there anything you want to keep people's attention on? What's coming out?
Yeah. There's the 2 short films that are coming out sometime in 2023. Stay tuned. Right. But you can stay tuned if you follow us on Instagram at Prelude Films. My personal is just my name, at Andrew Czap. And our website's prelude.tv, so you can see a lot of our body of work there. I think, there's a lot of cool and exciting commercial work coming this year, and just different, brands when you kind of go more of like a storytelling narrative approach and some longer form stuff. So we're really excited about that. But I think just the, like Smoke and Search and Destroy, I think 2 of the things to like really stay on the lookout for, and that we're really excited about.
Heck yeah. No, I'm excited to see it. And again, looking through your feed and also your, website of work, it's quite stunning, really cool style. And I think you'll bring a really unique vision to DFW and as really the industry as a whole. So I appreciate you coming today, taking time to have this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thanks for watching. Until next time, class dismissed.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Sweet.
Woo!